There are no shortcuts to getting highly coveted press coverage for your brand, only smart cuts like the DIY PR project. Learn how to grow your brand's credibility with PR on a budget with me by your side. This program is your all-in-one membership with expert training, customizable templates, and a supportive community to cheer you on every step of the way. Join us and start growing your business with free publicity today. Sign up now at diy-pr.com. What if the future of healthcare wasn't found in more red tape, but in radical simplicity and human connection? In this powerful episode of Grow Your Wealth, I sit down with Dr. Sarah Crawford, a physical therapist, entrepreneur, and founder of Anchor Wellness Center and Wave Physical Therapy for a raw and revolutionary conversation about what it means to build a business that truly serves both patients and providers. In this episode, Dr. Crawford shares how her frustration with fragmented care and insurance driven medicine inspired her to create a new model of medicine, one rooted in whole person healing, as she calls it, as well as community support and entrepreneurial empowerment. We dive into how Anchor provides healthcare providers with the infrastructure, mentorship, and co working ecosystem that they need to thrive, and why going outside the insurance model may be the key to reclaiming autonomy and impact. We also talk about the emotional side of entrepreneurship and what it means to lead with self awareness, and why grace, not perfection, is the true antidote to burnout. So, whether you're in healthcare or just building a values driven business, this episode is for anyone who wants to create a more meaningful impact without losing themselves in the process. Here's Dr. Crawford. Welcome, Dr. Sarah Crawford. It is wonderful to have you on the Grow Your Wealth podcast. How are you today?
Thank you so much for having me. I am actually really great. I'm feeling very good. I slept a full night last night. My job didn't wake me up.
A full night's sleep is absolutely a game changer. We might have to touch on that here in a moment. Especially impressive given that you wear so many hats: entrepreneur, physical therapist, mentor to other entrepreneurs. Could you take us back to the beginning? I would love to hear what has inspired you to pursue a career specifically in PT, but how that path eventually led to the founding of Wave and Anchor Wellness as well.
Yeah, well, thank you for asking that question. Let me see where to start. So I always knew I wanted to be a business owner. I bought my first entrepreneurship for dummies when I was 8 or 10. I can't remember which one. I've grown up in a family of entrepreneurs, and leadership is one of those things that I've always just happened into. I never really, I still to this date don't really think of myself as a leader, but I think just a passion for entrepreneurship has just been embedded in me. And I started as a physical therapist 14 years ago, and quickly saw that I needed more than what was available in a physical therapy practice. Just as a clinician, my patients needed more, and I wasn't the only person who could help them, and they needed more than me. And so I found myself naturally gravitating towards mental health therapists and physicians and personal trainers and Pilates instructors to help create a more robust outcome for my patients. And then I just got frustrated by the distance and the space between us, right? If I had a motivated consumer who needed an injection or wanted to start working out with somebody, but by the time I got a hold of the person and screened them to make sure that they were, good enough to train my client, or that they had the right skill set to help with the pain problem that we were dealing with, by the time that all happened, all this time elapsed. And now the patient just didn't have the same motivation level. And then, if they had to jump through the hoops for insurance authorization. So it was just all of this friction to just helping somebody get what they needed was just a barrier time and time again. And so I started questioning, what can we do to solve for that? And that's really where Anchor came from, is how do we get people who are the highest quality of providers, the most specialized, the most skilled, the most passionate, the most client-centric into the same space so that the consumer can just get access to the care they want when they want it without having to jump through all the bureaucratic red tape that is traditional healthcare. And then I started thinking about like what is causing those people who are so good at helping individuals from going out and doing this by themselves. And most of it is like they didn't know how to run a business, right? They didn't want to be in a white box by themselves. They knew that they too were not the only answer, that they needed a team of other multidisciplinary providers around them. And so it became this like dual task to try and create the space that supports consumers and also supports the health and wellness providers at the same time. And so a la the Anchor Wellness Center and Wave Physical Therapy, because I also was just frustrated by what the physical therapy ecosystem looked like. And I wanted to do something different with that. And so Anchor houses my physical therapy practice, Wave Physical Therapy, and it also currently houses 9 other independent health and wellness entrepreneurs that cover the multidisciplinary spectrum and supports them on the back end, which is what keeps most of us from going out and doing it.
That is so amazing. I love that you've married your passions and your expertise too, like coming up with an entrepreneurial lens, but as a person on the consumer end, right, helping your clients in a way that probably many of them haven't really been supported in the past before. I know I actually did an episode on this podcast not too long ago about physical pain that I've felt as an entrepreneur, right? And I've unfortunately have seen a lot of not so great PTs, and they were probably great people, great human beings, but in many ways, I think the system sets them up to fail and sets them up to fail and fail their clients too. So tell us a little bit more about how is it different where you are?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there's so many exceptional providers in this country, right? Much less this city.
Mm.
And the systems in which that we, are the norm don't allow us to succeed. In a medical setting, you're lucky if you get 10 minutes with a physician. On average, in the United States, you get 7 minutes with a physician in a appointment. That is the average amount of time. That is not enough time to figure out what is actually wrong with you. So what are they doing? They're being forced to use what we call gold standards to make their decisions. And so that's x-rays, MRIs, blood work. And that doesn't tell the whole story, right? That is the biomedical approach. And Wave and anybody who comes into the Anchor Wellness Center relies on the biopsychosocial model, which is looking at our biology. What does that data tell us? But also what does our psychology and the things that we do in our social interactions, how does that play into our health output? And so with Wave, we look at ourselves as being root cause based providers, and we provide what we call integrated physical therapy. So we are trying to find like, why does your knee really hurt? Like, tell me about what's happening. What does your nutrition look like? What does your sleep look like? What do your stress levels look like? Because that all drives our physiology, right? If we're chronically dehydrated, if we're chronically stressed, if we're chronically under slept, we cannot recover. And so it does not matter if I can go in and replace your knee, but at the end of the day, well, I can't, but some surgeon can. But at the end of the day, if you're not getting good nourishment, if you don't have good thoughts streaming through your head, if you are not getting enough sleep, you will not be able to turn over the cells that are required to heal and to not trigger the pain process. And so, we work really differently in that we want to like really get to like the crux of the issue, not just put a Band-Aid on it. And that's what I think most physical therapy is, which is such a shame because that's not how we're trained. We're trained, like we get more as physical therapists, to get on a soapbox for a moment. We have more education in pharmacology. We have more education in neuroanatomy. We have more education in imaging than general med students. Yet we're put into these systems where we're just, handed 5 patients an hour, and you can't ask the questions that you need to ask and make the clinical decisions you need to make for a person when you've got 3 to 5 patients in an hour time span. And neither can physicians who get 7 minutes. So we're all forced to whittle down and provide the least amount of risk associated with our care. And that is frustrating because that is sick care. That is not health care. Right?
Ooh,
That's reactive. It's not preventative. It's not prophylactic. And so our healthcare system is just really kind of backed into a corner of making like CYA decisions. And it's really frustrating. And so that's what we're trying to solve for here in my PT practice, but really globally with Anchor, because we don't bring any health and wellness business owners into our network who are in network with insurance companies, because that in and of itself puts them in a position to make decisions that are based on how they will get paid and not what is best for the patient.
I love that. So basically, the model that you have created here with Anchor Wellness is really obviously client beneficial, but also provider beneficial by exactly as you said, by cutting out things like insurance companies from the equation. You're able to provide both. To a lot of people, though, I know we've talked about that since we've been working together as well, too, Sarah, is that's scary. That's unusual. That's different, right? Because over the past century or so, health insurance runs the game, right? We play by their rules. And here you are really establishing different rules in that case. What are some of the conversations that you're having? Let's start with providers about this as well, too, when it comes to sort of laying off the gas with insurance companies and really following this incredibly unique model. What are the benefits?
Well, listen, I mean, every healthcare provider in this country knows that insurance has ruined their profession. Nobody is in denial about that.
Mm.
However, there is such a fear of change and a fear to do things differently. And so my opinion is that the longer we continue to participate, the more complicit we are in the fractured healthcare system that we have. And so part of my initial conversation with providers is that fee-for-service practice is where we were pre-1950s, before insurance became this giant conglomerate with so much control in this country. And so when we look at what we can do, the biggest resistance for fee-for-service care is the inequity of it. And when you take out the middleman, which is the insurance company, it becomes incredibly equitable. I'll tell you a recent story that happened with us. We had a patient coming down from Dayton, our offices in Cincinnati. So we had a patient driving an hour to come in. She was also simultaneously going to physical therapy in her community, getting insurance-based care. She got her bill 30 days later, and she was getting charged more per session for every session she went to in the insurance-based practice. And she never once had a physical therapist, A, one-on-one with her, or B, put their hands on her.
How does that work?
When she was like, this is highway robbery. And we're like, we know, right? So our services were, she saw us less. She only saw us 6 times. She went there 20. Our services were cheaper and she got better outcomes. She had been going there for 3 months with no changes, but her insurance paid for it. So she continued through her plan of care. And then when she got her bill at the end, she was like, I had to pay double for my session there than what I got here. And I got no direct one-on-one care or anybody to ever touch me. And so what happens is, like, as a consumer, they just don't know, right? Because they pay a monthly premium. And for most people, it comes out of their paycheck. They don't believe that they are paying for their insurance. So they don't understand that they are, right? They just never see that money because it comes out before it makes it to their bank account. And then they get a bill 30 days later, 60 days later for the care that they receive. And they have no power over it, right? It's pay this or we'll send you to collections. And for the providers, they also have no control over it, right? They don't know what they're charging because they just show up to work, and the system that they work for sets the rates. And the system that they work for tells them what they can and can't bill. So right now, today, here regionally in the greater Cincinnati region, there's a $500 million deficit across all of the healthcare systems to date. And this is still like lagging from COVID, right? Because the number one way that healthcare systems make money is through elective surgical procedures. And in 2020, those were taken away.
Mm.
You also had physicians who were in school training, surgeons who were in school training during that time period who didn't get to train. So now you've got this shortage of surgical procedures being provided. And so all these systems are trying to ramp up interventions that aren't emergent because emergent doesn't pay as well. And so there's this weird thing coming from the business side of healthcare that the providers really have no say in. They're just said, hey, hit these metrics. Hit these metrics if you want to keep your job. Hit these metrics if you want to get a bonus, if you want to get paid. And then we've got consumers who are just being told what to do. So, I love opportunity to talk about this because most people don't understand the back end of healthcare administration. And they just become cogs in the wheel.
Mm.
And you really need to be empowered to know how those decisions are being made. And would I love to say that the consumers who are making recommendations are completely benevolent? Yes, I would love to say that. I would love to say that we come to the table saying this is all you need. But at the end of the day, we all have to pay our bills too. We have to pay back student loans and we have to pay our mortgages and we have to pay for childcare and tuition or whatever it might be. So at the end of the day, we live in this capitalistic society and healthcare isn't like protected from that.
Definitely. And I can totally see too how this can lead to incredible burnout on both ends of the spectrum, right? Even just if you are, let's say, managing a healthcare system or even an independent practice, you know, take yourself as an example, you're probably not running credit cards, right? But you've got someone on your team that is in charge of some of that administration type of work. When you've got insurance in the fold as well, creating a lot of these red tape measures, it's frustrating, of course, for the consumer. I can speak definitely for myself, but probably for these providers as well, too, that are now collectors of, debts from their patients and their clients that, in many cases, like with your patients and clients are in pain, right? And so they're burned out because they've got now all these medical bills that they have to submit for. And then you're burned out because you've got to, work with these insurance companies and really not, like you exactly just said, Sarah, this isn't the job that you signed up for when you went into this
And that's
profession.
what you hear, right? Like there's just a mass exodus of primary care physicians from healthcare systems. And that's what they're saying. And that's what I said when I left, right? I did it 11 years ago. Like I knew 2 years into practicing in an insurance-based practice that was not going to work for me long term. I was not going to be able to sustain the way I practiced in that setting. I did that pretty preemptively before, there was a move. When I first started working in out of network setting, there were like 2 or 3 of us here in town as PTs who were working in a fee for service setting. There are a million at this point, right? And there was one concierge medical doctor, and now there are a lot. But that's what they're saying. They're saying this isn't what I trained to do, right? I didn't train to become this robot that just churns out billable codes. And for the providers that we're bringing to Anchor, entrepreneurship's a whole nother headache, right? That it is not like the grass is not greener. And I always try and tell people that like starting your own practice, starting your own business has a whole nother set of barriers and problems and its own risk of burnout. The difference is like you hold the keys to the castle, right? And you're in the driver's seat. And at Anchor, we solve for a lot of the things that burn out entrepreneurs, right? Like fixing the toilet when it's running and, cleaning up a leak and remembering to buy the toilet paper, like, and all these silly things that people don't think of that go into operationalizing a healthcare practice. Collecting bills, managing rescheduling appointments and cancellations, like the things that get you paid. There's all this other minutia on the back end that keep a lot of people from going out and doing it because they don't want the headache of it.
I love that. And I feel like too what you're building with Anchor, and I want to dive deeper into this as well, is that you're not just providing the resources, but the community aspect of it too. Like you're in it with 10 other entrepreneurs that have the same goals as you do as well too. And starting a business can require some upfront capital as well too. So it sounds like you're offering a bit of flexibility, a really a mentorship opportunity to some of these entrepreneurs as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Like, what is the typical kind of provider that works with you at Anchor that benefits from this type of model, or really is it anybody?
Yeah. So, like, who we want to support are providers who want to grow and scale a practice that don't just want to be like independent contractors for themselves, like lifestyle type businesses. Not that we can't support them, we do. We have a lot of those. But my personal mission, our personal mission of the Anchor Wellness Center, is like to revolutionize healthcare. And so we want people who want to be part of that revolution, right? Who want to break glass ceilings and who like believe the sky's the limit for what their personal discipline can do for the health of somebody through their journey through life. And so, what to answer your like question, like, yes, there are often really some significant startup like capital investments that go into opening a practice. And we help kind of offset that too, right? Because we supply like you were mentioning a co-working space. We're essentially a co-working space. So we supply a lot of the initial FF&E, furniture, fixtures, and equipment that a business owner would have to pay for themselves. We offset, they no longer have to go and pay for their own internet and phone and HVAC. And unless you've paid for physical space before, you don't often know everything that you're getting into. You don't often know that a landlord reconciles at the end of a year to say, hey, did I collect enough from you? And so, those are the things that we do. Like really a lot of our owners get to come in and just work.
Mm.
They get to come in and they get to do the thing that they went to school for, that they've dedicated their lives to, and they get to be really good at it. And then they get to figure out ways to be different and start to grow and scale from there without really having to think about like, where do I do this? What are the systems that I need to create? Like we supply all of that. So yeah, it's funny. Like we would love to work with people who have historically, ran their own physical space and know how hard it is. We don't tend to find those people. We tend to find people right as they're leaving traditional systems.
That makes a lot of sense. And I bet it also is alluring to a potential provider as well, too, because so much of, the medical industry seems to be very referral based. And it must be really nice to, again, have that community of people that can also refer business to you, because marketing costs are very high, right? When you're starting your new practice, too.
Yeah, for sure. And, we always tell people like we are not a marketing business. Like we do not have like a pool of clients, patients just sitting around waiting for your service. But we do have an ecosystem. And if you are smart enough to know how to tap into it, our philosophy is like rising tides raises all ships, right? So if we can all grow a pie together, that pie has an opportunity to 10x, 20x overnight. But you have to come to this network with an abundance mindset. And the really wonderful thing is like we have 5 personal training businesses that we support, and they all grow 30% year over year and we've never lost one of them. Which goes to show that like that abundance mindset does work. And we aren't an incubator, right? We don't want to be a place that just helps you at startup. Like we want to be part of your journey through your business and see you succeed and accomplish all of these things. And one of the ways that we do that is we offset your cost, right? Because you don't have to put so much of your cash into capital because we're supplying.
I love that too. Something that you had said as well regarding that, specifically when it comes to the financial aspect of it.
Most individuals are coming, like I said, I mean, a lot of us are coming out of school with debt, with significant debt. And so the idea, healthcare consumers generally, unless you're a chiropractor or maybe in aesthetics, are typically pretty resistant to spending money, right? Our training does not A, often does not have much business in the background, but B, does not really, it really does teach the scarcity mindset. So we're coming from these practices where they're typically saying, do more with less, right? So until you override that mindset, which comes with success, right? People are typically a little fearful of borrowing money or spending a lot. And you also don't have to, right? You can be really successful without having to spend a lot of money. And so we do that strategy on the front end when we bring in a partner to join Anchor to say, like, what do you really need? Like, what can you start with that will have the greatest ROI at the beginning? And then leverage capital later after you already have cash flow and a recurring, you know what your cash cycle is and some recurring revenue, and then make those investments. But you don't always have to do that on the front end.
Okay, so let's also, I want to unpack this a little bit more too, because we're also not talking about quick fixes or quick wins here, right? Because when people are really investing in a business, you've got to be signing up for this for the long run, of course, as well too. So tell us a little bit more also about how we reinforce this idea both in healthcare and business when potential providers are coming your way, or even your patients coming your way as well too. Are most of them open to this philosophy of like being in it for the long run? Are you talking to them upfront about that? Are they getting some of these coaching philosophies directly from you?
Yeah. So, we always talk about how it's like a marathon, not a sprint, right? And that's
Mm.
true for both of the pools of people that we support, consumers and entrepreneurs. And that is all about relationship building. And so again, like from who are we trying to attract to Anchor? Like, we're trying to attract people who have been doing this for a while. They're not brand new to it. They've been around. They've seen enough history to know like where their industry is going. And then from a consumer standpoint, they're coming to us highly motivated, right? Because typically they have experienced the barriers that are traditional healthcare, and they haven't gotten better, or sadly they've gotten significantly worse. And so, both pools of our customers are people who generally like they're already highly motivated. And so then what we're saying is like, look, that place that we want to get to, that is a way away, and we are not going to solve for that overnight. And anybody who claims that they will is probably selling you snake oil.
Mm.
Are there things that you can do right now to change your trajectory? Absolutely. 100%. There are very basic things. And they are, like you were just saying, having community. For either a patient or an entrepreneur, having a network of people psychologically rewires our brain. It changes the chemicals that are being constantly delivered that impacts our motivation, our reward system, our memory. That makes me say like, oh, okay, working on my computer late at night, that is the thing that's going to keep me up all night. And then I don't sleep and I don't wake up in the morning and I don't exercise. And then I go into work again the next day and I'm already starting from a depleted battery. And now I don't want to do that thing that I needed to do at the end of the day. And I'm always in a deficit. And now I'm burned out, right? And that same thing is true for the consumer who's dealing with pain, And so we have these conversations all the time. And this is where I think like when people ask me how I know so much about business, it's the same thing I know about being a physical therapist. It's just the audience being different, right? It's just taking the same knowledge of like, how do you motivate somebody who wants to get out of pain, and using that same concept and same formula around somebody who wants to grow a business, right? Start where they are, meet them there, achieve small successes and wins, set tangible goals and regular measurement sticks. And then you just keep moving the target as you get there. It's no different. It's just very, very subtle, small changes that make sustainable lifetime effects possible. And I think I shared with you like that James Clear book, Atomic Habits, was like such a game changer for me as an entrepreneur, and how I've been able to apply that as a clinician. And then in like with the coaching of the clients that we do here, it's small, simple things make the biggest difference. And if you just swing for home runs all day, every day, you're never going to get on base.
I love that you brought up that book, and that was a question that I also wanted to ask you to Dr. Crawford as well. You strike me as a very high achieving person, which I love and admire as a fellow entrepreneur. In addition to immersing yourselves in books like James Clear, Atomic Habits, are there other things that have made you this way or that have helped motivate you to become the high achieving and really industry disruptive professional that you are?
That's a great question. I would love to not be as high achieving as I
Yeah,
am. I think, didn't you tell me you're a 3 on the Enneagram as well?
I am. Are
Yeah.
you are as oh, God help us.
Well, I know it's just the cross we bear. Here's what I'll tell you, and here's what I tell the clients that I support here is I believe that my businesses will only be as strong as I am as an individual. And
Mm.
so the majority of the work that I do, quite frankly, on a daily basis is on me. And, my leadership skills, my resiliency, my empathy, my openness, my ability to ask for feedback and receive feedback. Knowing, so where do I spend a lot of my time? I spend a lot of my time investing in learning more about me and trying to embody that. And I think that embodiment is a reflection of what's happening in my businesses. And I'm very transparent with my employees. Like, I am a work in progress, and I am giving you permission to give me all of the feedback that you want to give me. And I ask for it to come in a place of love and compassion and grace. And typically when I get that, like, I'm a highly coachable person. And so, yeah, I think that for a lot of business owners, they think that they have to put so much of their work and their emphasis into the business, but they are the business, right? Like, you can't separate the two entities, like the owner from the business. And so I think a business is strictly a reflection of the person who owns it.
Amen. I honestly could not agree more with that, especially if you are in a service-based business, right? Like, you are providing a service, but you as a human being, right? There's more to it in, beyond just physical therapy, right? Like, all of the other ins and outs of the business as well too. I find myself in a very similar situation where I just can't get enough new knowledge and learning from, whether it's books, podcasts, talking to other entrepreneurs. And not everything has to be put into play. I think that can be a very risky business where every entrepreneur is kind of doing it differently. There's so many gurus online that are going to express their way or no way. And you just have to really understand you and what works for you, because what works for you will help you show up as best as possible in your business. And I know that's something else that you've talked about as well too, is the importance of delegation, so that you can look inward and really focus on yourself as well too. And I love that the model that you have created at Anchor allows these entrepreneurs, these healthcare providers, to focus on their craft,
Mhm.
right? While you guys help them with all of the other things. So it's delegation, it's community, it's business building. But that being said, as a fellow Enneagram 3, Sarah, do you also struggle a little bit with delegation?
I do. Yes, I just said to my team this week that I'm, like I said, I'm a work in progress, and I'm newly learning things about myself. And some of that, I two things. One is, like, entrepreneurship is the fastest way to get to know yourself, right? To, like, know all of the nooks and crannies and all of your, like, insecurities. But so is motherhood. And so, I started my businesses with 1 and a 2-year-old. So it was like just this double whammy of, like, who the hell do you think you are? Right. Uh, but I was telling my team the other day, I gave them permission to, like, nudge me when I am being controlling for the sake of being controlling. Right. Not because the situation demands it, but because that's my innate nature. And so, I think that there is, there is just a lot to learn. And the more you know what you don't know, the more like empowered you are to continue growing. And so I I think you have to be really receptive to feedback and asking for support around you. And I have to be cognizant to the fact that my nature is to do it all.
Mhm.
And when you do it all, you don't allow others to step up. And so I really have tried to focus on the nice thing about myself personally is I'm not a perfectionist. I might be a control freak and I might be a high achiever, but I'm not a perfectionist. And so I really have tried to consciously create opportunities for others on my team to step up and to solve for problems without me. And there is always ways for me to do more of that. But yeah, I for sure have struggled with delegating. And, but my COO just went on maternity leave the other day and I met with a potential anchor and I said, oh, I actually don't know how to do the next step here. So we're going to have to circle back, because that's something I've totally, I used to do all the time and now it's not on my plate. So, we'll see how we handle that.
Oh, that might be slightly refreshing, to be honest with you. Like, okay, I'm allowing people to take the reins and take these things off your plate. And congratulations to your coworker as
I
well,
know.
too.
I know, but weirdly in this country, she had to postpone it, or she had to postpone her C-section until tomorrow. I'm like, wait, what? She's like, I had to cancel it. Okay.
Because of insurance?
I know, right?
Yeah, that's that we could do a whole other episode on that where insurance companies, you're sick. Oh, but I'm sorry, you're gonna have to wait 6 weeks and
Yeah.
get sicker before
Mhm.
actually getting the care that you need. Oh my goodness. Well, I mean, Sarah, you are obviously someone who is very invested in reshaping healthcare, and kudos to you for that. We need this. I'm just dying to know what your long-term vision is for Anchor. How do you hope your work continues to impact your clients, these providers, and honestly, the broader wellness space and industry?
Yeah, I think I would love to see Anchor, and like my big, hot, hairy, audacious goal, I would love to see an Anchor Wellness Center in every state across the country. I would love to see it in every major metropolitan city. I think that this way of doing healthcare is the way that it's supposed to be done. Um, and it's really magical when we see people here and they see their providers talking and they see that we've strategized how to best help them. And so for me, like at the beginning of it, it was definitely for the consumer. And so I really love, we had a patient come through here the other day who's like, I've never left physical therapy without pain. This is a pre-professional dancer who's constantly been in pain and they never left physical therapy without pain. Like that is so like disheartening
Mm.
to me. When we have women come through here and they're like, I've never had a practitioner listen, right? They've never heard me. I just heard that in the last few weeks. I actually felt like I was heard. Like these are like fundamentals, like baseline objectives of how we provide healthcare. We're not doing anything extraordinary here, right? We aren't creating new ways of delivering care. We're just getting rid of the things that are really the biggest barriers.
Mm.
And so we're not, this isn't rocket science, right? It's really basic. It really comes down to very simple things. I would love to see that. I would love to see healthcare providers telling insurance companies to take a hike. I would love to see us go back to catastrophic care only in insurance world. And when that happens, healthcare gets a lot more affordable, but we have to 3 and 4x our cost to cover our operating cost, pay our providers, and try and make any money when we're paying health insurance companies. So, I think I would love to be part of that change. And it's going to take a lot more Anchor Wellness Centers to get a lot of people behind it.
Well, I'll definitely be rooting for you and helping you in any way that we can. Because it just sounds like honestly a win-win-win in so many different ways. And I just can't even tell you how much I can imagine it's appreciated that you really do consider the whole person, the whole patient when you do see them in through the door. That's so important. The way that you talk about PT is how I talk about PR, right? It's not rocket science, it's relationships. And people do want to be seen and heard. And I think that that is so powerful. Dr. Crawford, is there anything that I didn't ask you about that we should also touch on today?
No, the one thing I will say, just like in the spirit of what this podcast is, in terms of burnout, is whether you're a consumer of health services, you're an entrepreneur who's just started, you're an entrepreneur who's in it 10 years, like at the end of the day, the biggest recommendation I have is give yourself grace, right? Like, you know why you're doing it, you know where your value stands. And at the end of the day, we can, Rome was not built overnight. And everything just takes effort and repeated exposure, and giving yourself grace to know that like you're doing as much as you can with what you've got at the moment, and try it again the next day. You will eventually get there. Like, hope always exists, and that is why anchor is called anchor. Like, the anchor is the international symbol of hope, and and that is true for all of us. Like, there is never a point where you should run out of hope.
I love that you ended on that note. Thank you so much, Dr. Crawford. It was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much for listening. I hope this episode deposited some useful advice and insights to help you grow your wealth. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future conversations. You can find more resources, episode details, and updates at growyourwealthpodcast.com. And let's keep the conversation going on Instagram. Follow me at Grow Your Wealth Podcast. I'd love to hear your thoughts, questions, or takeaway from today's show. Until next time, remember, burnout is optional. Take care, and I'll see you next week.